Okay, let's talk about December 2025. This wasn't just another patch Tuesday. This was a full-blown crisis. A perfect storm was brewing in a cybersecurity world, and it was going to take a pretty wild collaboration to even try to contain it. So today, we're going to unpack the anatomy of this major coordinated cyber alert. It all kicked off with this really chilling statement from Apple. And when you see phrases like extremely sophisticated attack and specific targeted individuals, I mean, that's code. That's not your everyday malware trying to steal credit cards. No, this is the calling card of a nation-state actor. We're talking about a highly targeted operation. And the stakes? Well, they were about as high as they get. And here's the kicker. This whole crisis, it wasn't built on just one flaw. Nope, it was two. Two separate, powerful, and actively exploited 0 days. And the attackers weren't using them one at a time. They chained them together to create an absolutely devastating digital weapon. So what really made this whole thing stand out was the response. I mean, think about it. It forced two of the biggest rivals in tech, Apple's SEER team and Google's threat analysis group, to come out and do a public, coordinated disclosure together. You have to understand, when these two giants stop competing and start collaborating on the exact same threat, you know it is incredibly serious. So this really brings us to the two big questions, right? The ones that matter to all of us, whether you're running IT for a huge company or you're just trying to keep your own stuff safe. First, how in the world did the attackers pull this off? And second, and maybe even more importantly, what can you actually do to stay safe? Well, don't worry, we're going to break all of that down. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Section 1, the anatomy of the attack. This was a really clever two-stage compromise. Okay, so the first domino to fall was this bug right here, CVE-2025-43529. It's a use-after-free vulnerability in WebKit, which is the engine that powers Safari. So what does that even mean? Well, think of it like this. Your browser grabs a chunk of memory to do something, and when it's done, it throws it back in the pile, right? It frees it. But the attacker cleverly holds on to the address of that now empty spot. The moment the browser puts something new and important in that same spot, bam, the attacker uses their old address to jump in and mess with it, letting them run their own code. This was how they got their foot in the door. Now, getting in the door is one thing, but the attackers were still stuck inside the browser's sandbox. That's where the second bug comes in, and this is where things get really, really clever. This flaw wasn't in WebKit. It was in something called Angle. That's the almost native graphics layer engine. Basically, it's a translator that lets web graphics talk to your computer's actual graphics hardware. And the bug itself? It's called an out-of-bounds write. Imagine a piece of paper with lines on it. The attacker was able to write past the lines, scribbling all over the important instructions next to it. That's what they did with memory, and that's what gave them the keys to escape the sandbox and take over the whole system.
So let's put it all together. This is the attack chain. It's a classic 1, 2, 3 punch. Step 1, you visit a malicious website. You don't even have to click anything. The site exploits that first WebKit bug and gets code running inside your browser, but they're still stuck in the sandbox. Step 2, that malicious code then triggers the second bug, the one in Angle, to blast its way out of the browser's jail. And finally, step 3, they're out, full compromise. They can now install spyware, steal your data, turn on your mic, you name it, game over.
Okay, so now that we know how bad the bug was, let's talk about the response. This was an absolute race against the clock. Just look at this timeline. It shows you just how fast things moved. December 5th, Apple and Google report the flaws. Just 2 days later, on the 7th, it's confirmed. This thing is already being used in real attacks out in the wild. By the 10th to the 12th, we're talking less than a week from the initial report. Both companies are pushing out emergency patches to literally billions of devices. And on that same day, CISA, the U.S. cybersecurity agency, adds it to their must-patch now list for the entire government. I mean, this is incident response moving at the speed of light. All right, next up, the supply chain ripple effect. When you find a flaw in a core ingredient like flour, it's not just the bread that's bad. It's the cakes, the cookies, everything. That's what happened here. This was way bigger than just Safari and Chrome. So on the Apple side of the house, the list of affected devices was just massive. We're talking basically every modern iPhone from the 11 on up, a whole bunch of iPads, Macs, Apple TVs, even the Apple Watch. Pretty much anything that used WebKit to show you a web page was vulnerable until you got that emergency update. And of course, it wasn't just an Apple problem. Remember that second bug? The one in Angle? That's part of the open source Chromium project, which is the foundation for a ton of browsers. So yeah, Google Chrome was hit. You need to be on version 143.07499.110 or higher. But that also means Microsoft Edge, Brave, Opera, you name it. If it's built on Chromium, it was vulnerable. But here's a really sneaky part of the problem, something we call ingestion lag. Okay, so you updated Chrome. Great. But what about all the other apps on your computer that use a browser engine under the hood? I'm talking about apps built on Electron, like Slack, Discord, Microsoft Teams, or the little browser that pops up inside your mobile banking app. Those apps have to pull in, or ingest, the fix from the main project, and that takes time. So there's this dangerous window where your main browser is safe, but these other apps are still wide open.
Okay, this is probably the most important part of this whole thing. Let's talk about your digital defense strategy. What you need to do right now.
So I'm going to ask you a very direct question. Are you secure? Like right now, as you're listening to this, do you know for a fact that your browser is patched against this? If there's even a tiny bit of doubt in your mind, you need to check right now. Okay, let's do this together. If you're using Chrome or Edge or any Chromium browser, open a new tab and just type Chrome/version into the address bar. Go ahead, I'll wait. Look at the version number. Make sure it's higher than the one we talked about. If you're on an Apple device, it's even easier. Just go to Settings, General, Software Update. You've got to be on iOS 26.2 or later or macOS Tahoe 26.2 or later. Do it now. Now, for all my IT admins and security folks out there listening, your job is a bit tougher. Here's your checklist. First, prioritize your high-risk users. We're talking executives, journalists, anyone who might be a target. Get them patched first. Second, and this is huge, you have to force browser restarts. The patch doesn't actually apply until the user closes and reopens the browser. You know how people leave their tabs open for weeks? Yeah, that. Use your MDM tools like Intune to verify that the patches are actually applied everywhere. And finally, for detection, start hunting. Look through your logs for any weird spikes in browser renderer processes crashing. That could be a sign someone is trying to use this against you. All right, we've talked about the attack and how to fix it. Now let's zoom out and do a little postmortem. What does a crisis like this actually teach us about where security is heading? 72 hours. That's how long it took from the moment this vulnerability became public knowledge to attackers using it in the wild. We call this exploitation velocity, and it's getting faster and faster. The window of time we, the defenders, have to react, it's just shrinking to almost nothing. And just in case you thought this was just about technology, look at the target profile. Government officials, journalists, human rights workers, activists. This isn't random. These 0 days are being aimed directly at the people and institutions that hold our society together. This isn't about code anymore. It's about protecting democracy itself. So this all leads to one big, fundamental question. We know attackers can go from 0 to weaponized in 72 hours, but most organizations still run on monthly or even quarterly patch cycles. When the attackers are moving that fast, is our entire security model fast enough? Are we built for this reality? That's the question I want to leave you with. It's the challenge that every single one of us in this field is going to have to face.